can, or if you're willing. Megan, do you want to give us a countdown? Let us know if we're official. Are we live, Megan Greer?
We are live.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 1st Mountain Community Capital Fund Operating Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We're going to kick off today by doing a roll call. And so I'm going to go down the list. As I go down the list, please state your name, your organization, how you were appointed, and whether or not you're a voting member. And so I'm just going to go down the list. I'll call you out if I can find the list. All right, so we're going to start at the top. We're going to begin with Carl.
I'm Carl Alguire. I'm a City of Asheville appointee, vice chair, and voting member.
Frank.
I'm Frank McGowan, City of Asheville staff and a voting member.
John.
Hey, it's John Appleby. I'm a City of Asheville appointee and a voting member.
Karen.
Karen Avansky, I'm with Self-Help. I'm a non-voting member.
Lydia.
Lydia Turgeon, Carolina Small Business Development Fund, non-voting member.
Matt Raker.
Good morning, Matt Raker, Mountain BizWorks, non-voting member.
Megan Greer.
Megan Greer with Community and Economic Development. I also have Charlie Savage here with me.
Hello.
Thank you. Rachel Taylor.
Hi, I'm Rachel Taylor, Economic Development Division Manager here at the City of Asheville. Nice to see you all.
Rachel Sawyer Nygaard.
Good morning, everyone. Rachel Sawyer Nygaard here. I am a Buncombe County appointee and Buncombe County staff and your secretary taking notes today.
Tara.
Good morning, Tara Brown with Self-Help Credit Union also, and I am a non-voting member.
Yaslin.
Good morning, Yaslin Gonzalez. I am with Mountain BizWorks and I'm a non-voting member.
Aaron.
Hi, Aaron Harris, City of Asheville, and I'm a non-voting member.
All right. My name is Tim Love. I'm with Buncombe County. I'm the chair of the Mountain Community Capital Fund. I am a voting member. So based on my count, I believe we have quorum for today. We are anticipating that we might have some additional folks that join, but we do have quorum so we can take action if needed on any items today. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving. On the agenda, our first item is the approval of the minutes from the November 3rd, 2023 meeting. Do we have a motion for that approval?
I so moved.
Thank you, Carl. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand virtually or otherwise. All right. All those opposed? Seeing none, minutes pass. Thank you all for your participation. On the next item, we have two, and I think we can get through both. So why don't we start, if it's all right, I'm going to adjust the agenda unless there's any objections. I'd like to move the MCCF ARPA funding and process discussion up. Are there any objections to us doing that? We're just switching the ordering. Anybody? Bueller? No? Okay. So what we'd like to do, we've been talking a good bit about funding for the Mountain Community Capital Fund, and I think most are aware, but we have different funding sources. We have city funding, we have county funding, we have Dogwood Health Trust funding. But then additionally, we have different flavors of city and county funding that came in the form of ARPA versus general fund dollars. And so many of you are familiar, but ARPA, these are American Reinvestment Plan Act funds, came about post-pandemic as a way to boost recovery across the country. Those ARPA funds have a litany of rules assigned to those. And so we had to sort of follow those rules as those funds were utilized for the Mountain Community Capital Fund as well as other programs. And so what we've done today is we've invited Matt Raker to talk a little bit about how ARPA funding is being utilized as it relates to the Mountain Community Capital Fund. And, you know, this process is slightly different than what we traditionally see when we're using just general fund dollars or grant dollars. So wanted this committee to have a better understanding of the differences. And so that's kind of the context for this discussion. Any questions before we jump into that? Right. I also want to invite Rachel Sawyer Nygaard to chime in at any time. On the Buncombe County side, Rachel led our efforts for allocating, contracting, and doing many things related to ARPA funding. And so she'll be able to provide some guidelines for us as we proceed. But Matt, do you want to describe, or Rachel, would you like to kick off?
I would like to jump in with a question. I was not present at the last meeting. I know that Matt Raker has been our guest of the operating committee previously and shared this update. And so my question is, has there been a change or a concern related to ARPA that has led to this update on the agenda today, or is it more of a refresher?
It's the latter. It's sort of a level set. We've got new folks on the committee, like, John and others. And candidly, it's not confusing, but it's a complicated process. And so we want to make sure everyone understands it. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So Matt, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Tim. And thanks everyone for the invitation to be with y'all this morning. So just as, a little refresher on the ARPA side of the Mountain Community Capital Fund. So, the ARPA funding was really there to help the country have an equitable recovery from the pandemic. And we know that, across Buncombe County and Asheville, some of our underserved, very small businesses were some of those that were most impacted, by the pandemic. And to promote better economic opportunity and economic resilience going forward. I think the NCCF Collaborative really saw this as one of the great tools to be able to really benefit our community with, in the spirit of the ARPA funding. And this was also right around the time that the initial pilot funds, into the NCCF program, the 450 from the city and the county, we had fully committed those as well. And so we were looking at how do we further capitalize this important facility in our community. So we were thrilled that both the county and the city approved additional funding to help expand Mountain Community Capital Fund. Now in the process from getting the award completed, and Treasury released all the detailed guidelines and supplementals around the ARPA funding and how to use it. We determined that the optimal structure to fully comply with the program was that to have the funding flow through Mountain BizWorks to support new NCCF guaranteed loans. And as those loans are made, Mountain BizWorks will expend or transfer the guarantee portion to support those loans to MCCF. So originally we were hoping that we could just send the funds directly to the MCCF facility and have them there and just, like our normal capitalization of the MCCF facility and use those. However, the detailed guidance would not allow that approach. So we had to create this other structure. It works the exact same as the way, normal MCCF works with one exception. So normal MCCF, we've got the guarantee funds there in the fund. managed by Self-Help. And, when we run through the approval process, per, the way the fund guidelines are set. And then once the loans are approved, then the lender, Mountain BizWorks, for example, will close the loan. At the time we close the loan, we fund the loan to the borrower, and we send the 1% guarantee fee to the MCCF fund. Our ARPA program works the same as that with the one addition. So the same process of loans get approved the same way. But then when we go to close the loans and fund the loans, we're funding the loan to the borrower. We're funding the 1% guarantee fee, and then we're also funding the guarantee portion to MCCF at that time. So as those qualifying loans are made, those funds are then committed to the MCCF fund. And there's just a little bit over 2 million in MCCF guarantees that are committed through this program with the Mountain BizWorks matching funds and the ARPA monies combined. And that's 1.15 million from the county and 875,000 from the city. Both of those programs kind of came online at different times, but the kind of start of the period of performance was both kind of spring of last year. We have through the, our goal is to these funds are on a timeline. One, we want to get the impact out there in the community as quickly as possible. But ARPA also has a sunset date. So our goal is to get these funds fully committed and deployed by the end of 2025. And today I was just running the numbers. This morning, we've been able to commit about 910,000 of the 2,025,000 there. So we're we're close to 45%, in terms of total funding deployed. So I think we're well on track to fully expend those funds by the end of the period there. And then as those loans get paid down, those all those guarantee funds are in the MCCF fund and become part of the MCCF funding in perpetuity for use as the committee and the partners so desire. So hopefully that's helpful. I also, if I have to go back and refresh myself on this as well for how everything's set up, so I'd be glad to help with any questions if I can.
Great. Thank you for that, Matt. And so definitely want this to be open discussion. The one item I would add, and Matt kind of said it, but I'll just reiterate it. Traditionally, we would provide funds to the Mountain Community Capital Fund, and it would sit in an account with Self-Help in case there's ever a default and the need to pay out kind of that loan guarantee. And the funding with ARPA doesn't change that at all. The difference here is Treasury has a requirement that the funds need to be expended, like spent by a certain date. And that's the exact opposite of what we want with this loan guarantee. Like, we don't actually ever want to we don't want loans to default. We never want to use the loan guarantee. We never want to spend the money. And so it put into question, it was like a fundamental mismatch of funding. However, we were able to find a way to do that because the BizWorks team was able to take on some risk, some administrative burden as well, so that we could do this. So I think it's pretty exciting, but wanted to make sure that y'all understood it. And if you still have questions, let's talk about it, because everyone needs to have a good understanding. So. Questions, comments?
I've got a question. Is Mountain BizWorks active with the city contract as well as the county contract?
Yes. Yeah. Both contracts are fully live and active. And we've deployed about 46% of the guarantees under the city contract and 44% of the guarantees under the Buncombe County contract. So both are tracking very, very similar. And I know MCCF loans are available to anyone within there. We've generally been kind of allocating city projects to the city funds and county projects, outside of the city projects to the county funds, even though they're both eligible for for anywhere in the county.
Got it. Thank you.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right, so, we have, go ahead, Frank.
Actually, you might be getting into this, Tim. In regard to the operating agreement and what's reflected in that operating agreement, is that where you're going next?
I was not, but by all means.
Okay, so obviously the ARPA support is a fantastic benefit that we're where we can see the same impact for a longer term. Our current agreement, even though it's been renewed and extended to get us through 2025, so it's no longer this pilot, it's set to run through 2025. The agreement itself is out of date and doesn't necessarily reflect the new infusions of funding via ARPA dollars or Dogwood. So those are both pieces that we obviously need to get updated. And there's a lot of evergreening of the agreement that I think we could do as well. As going over this with Aaron Harris, who he's the ABI manager. For those of you that don't know, Aaron Harris is our new Asheville Business Inclusion Manager and has joined us. He's still virtual right now, but will be in person hopefully soon. And as we were going over the operating agreement, noticing that we have names rather than titles and that sort of thing. So there's a lot we can do to evergreen that. But I think probably more importantly, accurately reflecting what dollars are flowing into the fund, and then how do we recognize and not so much account, but have a clear and transparent understanding of what's being held at any given time within the fund from these various funding sources.
Those are all great items, Frank, and ready when you are to talk about those in the agreement.
I have been sending notes to another colleague just a moment ago, trying to find out where we are and getting something scheduled to take that next step. So trying to work it on this end, Tim.
Understood. Here and ready. So other questions on the relationship with these ARPA funds and how that's slightly different? Anything from Matt? I know Matt's got a meeting to run too.
I have one other item, and this is not the proper setting for the conversation, but just to flag it because Matt, you and I are on the line together. We do need to follow up on the reporting because what the numbers you verbally shared, I don't think we're caught up on the ARPA reporting. I checked that prior to coming in here, and I didn't realize we were as far along with the project as we are. So let's follow up soon.
Great. Look forward to that.
Awesome. If no final comments from Matt, you're welcome to hang out if you'd like, or run on to the next. We're going to transition to the next item on the agenda. So, all right. So next up on our agenda, we were going to hear an update on fund status, and Karen was going to lead that. As context for those tuning in and for the committee as a whole, we've been having discussions about how to best utilize the funds that we do have. They're sitting idly, and idly in a good way. We haven't had to use these loan guarantees because we've only had one default. And so that's a good thing. But the question that John and others have raised is, could we put the money to work? And so Karen is going to provide an update on that. We've had some conversations, so go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, hey everyone. The biggest part of the conversation that we've been having is possibly moving the fiscal role over to Mountain BizWorks because they are, as you know, the primary users of this program. They hold the ARPA funds. And so basically they'll be transitioning them to us. We'll be transitioning them back. We have met a little bit with Tim and John. We're going to meet not next week, the week after next, to talk about this. Mountain BizWorks is open to taking on that role. Obviously, there'll be some machinations to figure out how to make that work, but we're going to start having those discussions to see if we can move that role to them. So in the meantime, you know, we've at Self-Help, we have the loans from the city and the county for about $450,000, and then the funds from Dogwood, the grant for another $450,000, plus interest that's been sent over by Dogwood Trust for the loans that they've, I mean, not the interest, the 1% fee that has been sent over for each loan that Dogwood Trust has made. They haven't, we are still working out the details and trying to figure out if it makes sense for Mountain BizWorks to send the guaranteed funds for the ARPA dollars that Matt just talked about, if they're going to make this switch or if they should just hold on to those. So we don't have those at Self-Help at this moment. So in the discussions, you know, the question is, can we have it earn some interest? And I think, you know, on the loans, so folks should understand that Mountain Community Capital isn't an organization. So they needed someone to make loans to a particular entity, and Dogwood needed a particular entity to make a grant to. So right now, the loans from the city and county are actually loans to Self-Help that we are using that money for the purpose of MCCF, and we'll continue to do that. And then the grant is a grant to Self-Help, again, for the purpose of MCCF. So we can look at it. There's a little more administrative pieces, which I won't go into right now, but we can put some of these funds, particularly the grant funds, there's a little more flexibility there. The loan funds, it's at a 0% interest loan to Self-Help. So if we pay interest, sort of like we're paying to administer the funds, but on the grant side, there's a little more flexibility. There's nothing in the agreement that talks about how to manage those funds. You know, there's nothing that says we have to earn interest. Typically with us, when we get things like this, we don't put them in interest-bearing accounts because the funds need to be kept and held for the purpose of the guarantee. You know, normally you make a deposit into a bank and they're going to use that money to make other loans, do other things, earn on those funds. These funds, part of it at least, has to sit and be available for the guarantee purchase. So, but again, I think given the amount of money that's in there and more money coming in from the loans made through ARPA, you know, we can decide, or you can decide to take some of those funds and put it into an interest-bearing account. Again, given that we may make this shift to Mountain BizWorks, I think that depending upon what kind of instrument you use, you know, it might not make sense to do, you know, a year-long CD if we're going to move that, if we want to move those funds to Mountain BizWorks in the next year or sooner. But they can be put into something that would earn some interest.
Thank you for that, Karen. Definitely want, if there's any questions, want to hear those. What I do want to say before questions is, you know, any of these types of decisions, you know, or items we would bring back to this committee to kind of, you know, endorse. But, you know, we need to do a little bit of groundwork so that we have, you know, something to propose, whether it's interest-bearing accounts or changing the custodian of the funds, all of that. So that's where we're at. If anybody has questions or would like to be more involved in those discussions, by all means, nominate yourself. But with that said, are there any questions from the group? right, Karen, as always, appreciate self-help's role and, keeping us where we need to be in between the guardrails and looking for opportunities to, make the money, make the program work better for those that live in our community. So thank you.
I'd like to chime in on the topic. I think it makes a lot of sense to have Mountain BizWorks more proximate, and given that that entity is the only entity that's done loans on MCCF so far. Your risk is self-help not being as actively engaged if the entity stops being the note or the custodian. And I think we've gained a lot from Karen and your self-help colleagues over the years. And so that would be something that I would hope we can have as part of the conversation as well, how to keep self-help as an active participant.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't want to speak for Tara, but we'd like to stay involved. And so, yeah, I think there are ways that we can talk about how we can continue to do that, even if we're not the fiscal agent.
Great.
And as far as interest goes, I'm glad that it's a topic of conversation. It's been a missed opportunity, I think, not to have our funds grow. This has been a really favorable climate for interest income and missed opportunity for MCCF during this time.
Hey, Tim, I think I just want to add a clarifying comment, I guess, to what you said, just to make sure the point was not lost. I think we still want to make sure we have an independent custodian of the assets. I think that, that was certainly, I don't know if you emphasize that point enough. So not rolling everything and all control with Mountain BizWorks. We still want to have some custodian who can send an independent statement so we avoid any potential issues on that front.
That's fair. And we've had some, at least initial conversations on that, but want to ensure that there's no conflict and that we have transparency. And that's a really good point, John. I appreciate you sharing that. Very well. Well, we're going to try to Rachel's point, there's a little bit of a missed opportunity here, but the opportunity is not gone. And so I think if we can move quickly, which we're trying to do to bring some of these items to closure in terms of where the funds sit with the custodian, can those funds then be deployed into some type of interest account? I think these are all things we can do. We just have to move quickly and bring the items to closure. So
I'm unmuting again to
Yeah.
join in that conversation. And I appreciate Frank bringing up the need for us to bring our documents to date. And so this is timely that we could take this action at the same, do the operating agreement and the duties and services agreement updates while making this change. We haven't had a history of moving quickly on those updates. And so what can we do differently now to make sure that this really does get addressed?
So we've got a meeting scheduled to bring the general discussion forward on where the funds sit, changes to the agreement. We need to move those forward. And Frank, I know you said that y'all are looking at it, but we need to put something on the calendar so we can kind of nail these down. So let me know.
We're meeting at 1:30 today to ask when that's going to happen.
Perfect. So.
Point taken.
Yep. Good deal. Other thoughts, comments on this item? All right. Appreciate everyone's input on that and the leadership, the thought-provoking questions. It's all good stuff. We're going to move into new business. In new business, we do have a loan guarantee to discuss today. Really exciting. So, Yaslin, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tim. We'll go ahead and share my screen. see, yep, bigger. All right. Can everybody see that pretty good? Okay. Great. Well, so we've got a new request. This is a service-based business. It is a Latina owned and then LMI as well. They're in Buncombe County. The business is existing. They have been operating since 2021, but became a legal entity in 2022. And the reason why they're not bank eligible is because they don't have those 2 years of operating history. We'll review the financial model here in a little bit. So the total loan amount is $102,000. The funds will be used to purchase equipment and including a vehicle and a skid steer. The collateral will be a UCC and all business assets. The value of the assets is projected at $145,000. However, we'll apply a 50% discount, which a liquidation value of $72,750 is assumed. So there's a pretty large gap in collateral there once the discount is applied. The rate is 5% fixed, 84-month note, so bringing their payment to $1,441 with principal and interest. Their credit score, they have excellent credit scores. However, the repayment history has been limited. They really have no debt, personal debts that way. Due to that, they don't have a whole lot of credit history to review, but overall their credit scores are excellent. They've invested about $150,000 of their own into the business since its inception. They will be retaining 3 full-time jobs. They have not been, they recently became engaged with Mountain BizWorks, so they have not had technical assistance at this point. However, they will be paired with a coach post-closing to enhance marketing and then their bookkeeping skills as well. They will be seeking the full $70,000, so the max guarantee on this request. The business has been able to grow substantially through cash flow. However, now they really have seen a need to purchase their own equipment rather than renting it, because those rental fees have really been substantial, and which represents 11% of their expenses. So being that they can now purchase their own equipment, they'll significantly cut down their expenses. So we'll review the financial model here. So 2023, so far, they've been at 1.4 million. You can see they have taken their owner compensation and then expenses. We have added back some adjustments. They purchased a vehicle and some trailers, and their cash available for debt service is $158,307. So they can comfortably and easily afford the proposed loan. And we projected revenue, we did a conservative increase of 8% for 2024. So overall, the business is in a great position. Of course, they don't have the $100,000 to put in to purchase the equipment. So that's kind of where we come in. So they were not able to find funds anywhere else because they don't have 2 years or more of operating history. So with that, I will stop it and see if there's any questions. Yes, Carl.
Thank you, Yaslin. I guess I'm channeling D. Williams here, but they have the money. These are hard assets that have value, probably that don't depreciate as greatly as many that we've seen. I'm just wondering why we're doing 7 years. They clearly have the ability to pay this note back.
That, based on their cash flow, I mean, we gave them 7 years to give them a little bit of just room for them to be able to grow and eventually, purchase additional equipment. Knowing the borrowers, I believe they are wanting to pay this off as quickly as possible. However, we don't want to really put them in a position where they're not able to repay as quickly.
And is 7 years kind of the standard today at Mountain BizWorks?
For this loan amount, yeah, it is.
All right, thank you.
Do we have other questions related to this item? I appreciate seeing all the detail on this particular screen, Yaslin. This business seems sound and
solid.
Yeah, it's great. And so hopefully this helps them grow. But, to Carl's point, I hope that, this is a good utilization of the funds, and that we're really reaching kind of the businesses in most need. But this is a younger business, so it makes sense to kind of help them continue to gain their footing.
Thank you.
Other thoughts or questions or comments?
We just had Hunter Guzman join.
Good morning. All right. Any other questions or comments for Yaslin? All right. So, this is a max loan guarantee, so it does require action by this committee. So at this point, I'd ask if there's a motion to approve this loan guarantee.
I so move.
We've got a motion from Carl. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Frank. Motion and a second. At this time, we'll take a vote. Please indicate if you're in favor by raising your hand, virtually or otherwise. All right, please lower your hands. Is there anyone opposed?
I did not raise my hand because I wasn't quick enough. I approve.
Thank you. Seeing none opposed, this guarantee passes. Super exciting, to see a business sound with the opportunity to grow and, investing in assets rather than renting them. I think this is spot on. So love it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Very cool. So we'll move on to the next item in new business. This is an item that I added at chair's discretion. So I wanted to talk about our meeting schedule. So we've got our next meeting in January, and just wanted to confirm that the first Friday in January still worked for everyone. That would be January 5th. I assume most folks are back from holidays, but wanted to put it out there and see if anyone had an issue meeting on January 5th. If none, we'll keep the meeting as is. Speak now. Don't send me an email on January 2nd saying that you decided to go skiing. Like none of that works. Like now you're committed. Anybody? All right. So we're going to keep the meeting as scheduled January 5th. Frank, I'll work with you and your team to figure out like when we get things posted around the holidays and all that. But we'll keep the meeting as scheduled.
Hey,
So-
Tim,
yes.
sorry, didn't speak before, but I do have to check with my team to see if there will be any requests that we bring up. And if that's the case, we may need to push it a little bit to kind of give us some time to get those ready to submit. I don't know if any at this time, but that could easily change over the next couple weeks or so.
Sure. And we want to be responsive the speed of business. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, and Tim, I'm glad you mentioned the posting of materials. I'm assuming the county has the same holidays as the city. So it looks like that week prior is short for us. So the 28th, 29th are the only days that week that city hall's open. We can certainly get things posted, but we can work that detail out. But we do have a very short week that week.
Understood. My proposal would be to get everything posted by the 22nd. So we can talk about that more. Where our committee has plenty of time to review the materials, and I don't have to respond to emails while opening presents. All right.
Hey, Tim, you mentioned earlier in the meeting that there is another meeting scheduled to talk about the custodian. When is that occurring?
Yes, that just got scheduled. Let me pull it up.
The reason for my ask is does that give us enough time to get some progress completed?
We're scheduled for December 11th
Okay.
to have that discussion. So I think we'll be able to report out. I don't think we'll be decisive, but at least a new update.
Great, thank you.
Right. So at this point, I'd like to take a moment. So to talk about our next agenda. So I think, as always, we'll talk loan guarantees. We'll provide an update on this custodian discussion. And then, I think, Yaslin, we're probably going to be about ready for a quarterly report. That sounds about right to me. Is there anything else that the group would like to hear an update on as we move towards our January meeting? Go ahead, Carl.
Just the status and timing of the one we feel is moving towards default. Would be good to start the year understanding when and how that's going to happen.
That's a good item. And Yaslin, are you comfortable taking that action?
Yeah, I can have Kelly Foster, our risk asset manager, join us for the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Hey, Carl, I don't know if you're in a position to talk about where we are with maybe some other partners. I don't know if that's something we can put on the agenda for January.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So everybody that I've reached out to, 4 strong candidates, all of them, I've sort of left the discussions open with the idea that once our operating agreement has been finalized, that I would send that to them to bring before their board to see if in fact they could operate under the terms and conditions we require. If in fact they can do that, they would be, we would offer to have them attend a meeting, understand how we do business, discuss with them as a group their focus and intent with joining the group. And then once they were dismissed, that we could vote on their participation. Because we are also now talking about streamlining and changing some of the format, I am in a bit of a quandary about, I'd like to say something in December, because I had sort of committed that I said I don't think it'll be weeks, it could be months, but I don't think it will be, into next year, where clearly that's where we're headed. So I think I should circle around with all of them. If with approval from the board here, I can send them each a note saying, we're still interested, we're still moving forward, here's where we are. But I very much would like to keep them on the front burner because they all look like really good candidates.
Excuse me, Carl, just a quick question. How many folks are you talking to?
4. And the reality is that at least half of them aspire to work in Buncombe County. They're not currently working in Buncombe County. And so, you know, the question is, can they execute as much as they desire to do so? Can they do that? And so I think that there is still some open question as to whether or not these 4 are going to ultimately be actualized partners for us. Any other questions?
Not for me. I certainly have no objection to you continuing to speak with those lenders and kind of keeping them, you know, informed of where we're at. So.
I'm unclear what is necessary in order to move forward. I understand that it's in a holding pattern, but what is it that needs to happen in order to be ready to interview them?
Well, we've had initial interviews with them, sort of saying, you know, here's how we operate and here's our mission. There's certainly an alignment with mission, and they certainly could alter their communication in a way that meets the standard for a public meeting. We talked about, you know, anonymizing a deal sheet, what level of information we would like to receive. I have not sent them an anonymized deal sheet. What my approach was to send them an operating agreement, an itemized deal, an anonymized deal sheet, and an overview of who and what we are. And then they have to internally see if their board would like to participate in this program. And they can't really vote on that unless they sort of see the details. You know, they agree in principle, but it's all in the details. And so I don't think there's anything other than the fact that if I send them a sheet, it's going to be amended as soon as they receive it. So it just didn't make sense to make them jump through the hoops twice.
I would like to propose that the changes that Frank was talking about earlier to our legal documents for MCCF have a method. I think you referred to it as evergreen, but have a method for potential new lenders to be considered and added as one of the change components. And maybe that's, there's some different ways that I can think of off the top of my head to get there. But hopefully within the next month, we're going to be having really substantive and tangible progress on the updates on that legal agreement. So now seems like the time to make it possible to bring in other lenders. Frank, I think you went up and then back down.
Yeah, Frank, do you still have your hand up?
Well, I was just going to mention something. I was looking at the allocation of duties agreement to get wonky here for a second. And I was looking at section 1.4 regarding participating lenders. And while there's language in there that appears to make it possible for the operating committee to admit new lenders, that's great. We didn't really, I'm not immediately seeing our process or procedure for it, which is, I think, what we're trying to work through here right now. And, I think to Rachel's point, it looks like we can do it with the vote of this operating committee. So that's great, being able to move that forward. Just what does that look like? And, what level of detail needs to be in the operating agreement or in a procedure? I think this discussion that's going to have happen between our legal and Buncombe County's legal. That's all I've got to say.
And Frank, isn't, the way that it was originally written, those lenders were written into the agreement. And what we've been seeking to accomplish is that those are all on an amendment because we do seem to have the power to add them. The question is, how do we add them? And so the deal sheet, our agreements have to be altered to make that happen. And again, we keep coming back to legal.
Yep. And we shouldn't have to go back to the city council and board of commissioners to have them update their agreement when we get more money in the account. That'll be another flexibility piece that we build in. So I think we have several reasons to be updating these two documents. One is kind of like the more policy document. One is kind of more the procedure document. Their names are hard to remember. It's the duties and services agreement and the operating committee rules of procedure. Karen, I think, talked to us before about putting fewer things, just the necessary things in the policy document and giving us more flexibility where we can on the procedure document. And we're on the county side certainly willing to do what we need to do to get those updates.
And I
Great.
think John Appleby and I, coming from the business side, have little to nothing to offer on what it takes to get this stuff through the government. So we rely on your all expertise.
And we thank you for your patience.
Very good. Well, I think the latest version that we've passed around of the services and duties agreement achieves much of what has been described today. So I look forward to that discussion to bring that to closure. So at this time, we've got about 8 minutes left. I see Rachel. Go ahead.
I apologize for taking up so much
You're fine.
airspace. I was listening to you share the items for the next agenda, and I don't know that I got them all captured. I heard the potential change in custodian,
Mm-hmm.
the
I've got-
legal agreements, the delinquent loan, and potential new members. Is that the list?
Yep, I have default, new partners, custodian, and then quarterly update.
Quarterly update. Thank you.
Yep. Good deal. What I'd like to do, so I'm gonna, one, Megan, I'd like to see, do we have any members of the public with us today for public comment?
No, we do not.
Great. So then we're going to adjourn in just a moment. I did want to open the floor to see if anybody has any general updates they'd like to share, but I've got an update that I wanted to share. Buncombe County staff provided an update on its strategic plan at a recent meeting of the county commissioners. And as part of that, I provided an update on our section, which is the vibrant economy, and specifically spoke about the work of the Mountain Community Capital Fund at a high level, and noted, our $2 million in loans, our 54 loan guarantees that are on the street, our one default, and then really took the moment to talk about the demographics of these loans and guarantees, of which I don't have the numbers in front of me, but over 97% to BIPOC businesses, something like 40% to women-owned businesses, 12% to Latinx-owned businesses. And so just a really impressive statistics that really underline like the significance of this program, but also its alignment with county strategic values around equity and small business ownership. And the board was really receptive and, asked some general questions, and their questions to me were, well, this is great. Like, how do we do more of it? And they asked, is this a matter of funding? And I noted that, funding is always a thing, but we have funding right now. It's about sort of expanding our reach and our depth into community. And so just wanted y'all to be aware of that. It was a positive discussion. As we continue to meet, if there's ways that we can continue to expand that reach or do more good through, investments or whatever it is, like John has suggested, I think we just need to continue thinking about it, because the program results are great. And so I thank everyone for what they've done to make that happen. So go ahead, Carl.
And I just, on that same note, I wondered if we should, or what, at what point in time would our last grant from Dogwood have occurred? And would it be an opportunity for us to request an increase in funding? I think we are totally on mission with what they're doing. My understanding is that they have struggled to put enough of their money to work, and we have a very good track record. And strike while the iron is hot, I would love to at least make the request whenever that's appropriate.
That makes a lot of sense. What I would suggest, and Yaslin, this isn't a suggestion for our next meeting in January, but I think it would be good for us to kind of do almost a pipeline or a projection of our funds. And, you know, because I know BizWorks is looking specifically at the ARPA funds and like when those will kind of be expended. But I think it'd be good to look at the overall portfolio so that we can time that ask, to Carl's point, and, you know, get in front of it. Like if we think we're going to be done, you know, in January of 25, let's go ahead and get in front of Dogwood or whoever before that happens. So maybe that's something we can talk about a little bit. Does that make any sense, Yaslin? Or...
Yeah, it does. And it kind of, I guess Mountain BizWorks, you know, we do our strategic planning every year. So right now, I believe we're, so far this year, we did a little over $1 million in Catalyst loans, which a lot of those loans we were able to tie the MCCF guarantee on. The ones, of course, in Buncombe County and City of Asheville. So for next year, we have a projection as well, but we haven't really broken it down per county or loans that would be a fit for MCCF yet. But we could certainly have that.
That'd be great. Go ahead, Carl.
So last night at the Mountain BizWorks annual party, there was a presentation about additional award money from the federal government, a big chunk of which going to Catalyst and other minority accelerator opportunities in the community. And I thought that certainly lends the logic of, do we have the necessary capital to guarantee an increase that's coming through where it begins? It begins with, you know, Catalyst and Mountain BizWorks, and that money being more ably placed if they can get a guarantee from us. And so I know that we seem to have a good we're on track and on plan, but I also feel like our story's really good right now. And so the sooner that we ask while it's good, the better that potentially it would be the outcome. So thank you.
Great. Tara, I see your hand.
Thank you. I was also at that Mountain BizWorks event last night and excited about that announcement of additional capital. And I'm thinking about all these different potential resources, and if there's some idea of some kind of convening of everyone working in this space. I think it was maybe 2019, there was a convening at MAHEC around, it might have been coming out of the last disparity study or something like that, around entrepreneurship and resources and next steps. So we have, you know, a county strategic plan, we have disparity study, we have Mountain BizWorks getting new funding, and just kind of mapping out what resources are available, what's still needed. We have a new staff person in the Office of Business Inclusion. So I'm not asking for someone to make a conference or do more work, but I just wonder Yeah, for those of us working in this space, if there's a way to link and understand everything that's happening and to see where there's still gaps. Yeah.
Good idea.
Did you just nominate yourself, Tara, as chair and vice chair of the Small Business Conference?
Well, and it is, I mean, I am at the moment working on a presentation to the Reparations Commission on Monday on how to do something similar, right? Map out what resources, and this is specifically for Black entrepreneurs, and what I'm talking about here could be broader, but in that we're asking for more resources and new programming and looking at what has been done in the past and what's worked and what hasn't. So maybe that's a space for it, but I also know these conversations are happening in other spaces. So I don't necessarily want to make a new thing, but I just want to put it out there. Is there a way to connect all of these?
I think it's a great suggestion. I've spoke with Sandra Dennison before she sort of moved on, and Dwayne Adams, and I think they had kind of shepherded things together, and so it's probably time to think about that. But Lydia, I see your hand is raised as well.
Yeah, thank you. One thing I just kind of wanted to, with Yaslin, maybe you and I can talk a little bit. And I know that, Carolina Small Business has not put any funds forward or put any loans forward for approval, but I actually have a couple in mind right now that I'm working with the borrower. So yeah, so I would like to see, and I'll go back to, Reggie, talk to him about how maybe we can forecast a little bit now that I am a lot more active there, what we might be able to be doing as well, so that we have that number, and to the point, then we have some growth and might need more funds, which would be a good thing.
That's great news. Administrative, but great news.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
So,
it is. I'm excited.
very cool. Lots of good discussion. We're 2 minutes over, so I'm gonna get out of here. I appreciate everyone's time. Thanks again. If I don't see you, I hope you have a great weekend and great holidays. We'll be back on January 6th. So see y'all soon.
Happy holiday.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.